what are some things that stood out to you? Like, what were some things that stood out from the case? Let's start with that. Let's see.
For me, what stood out is it seemed like it wasn't necessarily a one problem thing. It seemed like there was a lot of political underlying currents going on.
Yeah. Sorry, that was loud. Yeah. So the first question says, what do you see as the root cause of the problems identified in the case?
One of the problems I really focused on was the way the two, the Bettman and Goodenow, or however you say their names, how they just could not seem to have any kind of respect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, the two of them together just weren't a good match.
I think something that I noticed was that Goodenow, he was the head of the union, and then you had Bettman that was the head of the owners. Both of them didn't have any skin in the game. So Bettman, he just represented the owners, and he was actually an executive that came from the NBA. Goodenow wasn't a player at the time. He used to be a lawyer. So both of those people, it seemed like a lot of what they were doing was a lot of posturing to try and make it seem like that they were good at protecting their clients or good at representing their clients. But in the end, what seemed like it was good for representing their clients ended up hurting them.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems, I agree with all that you guys were saying. I don't think it was that much of there was a lot of mistrust between the two of them, and they've mentioned it a couple of times during the case, how there was a lot of just there was no trust between the NHL and what was the other one?
NHLPA, I believe.
Yeah, NHLPA. Yeah, there wasn't a lot of trust between those two. And I think the way that the NHLPA came up, it was, it started saying like the history of it and how money was a problem because like they needed to know how much they wanted to have a certain amount like of payment. That money was a problem, but I think the main problem was because there was no trust in teams even earlier in history, so. Anything else? Let's see. How would you describe the culture of the NHL? Strengths and weaknesses of the NHL.
Well, I think the only part that we really got to see was the executives and the separation between the actual teams and the executives. Because like Tyler was saying, they were they weren't really a team. They were two separate beings, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it was there was a lot of strong growth from both sides of it. The owners saw a lot of growth in revenues over time, and players saw a lot of growth in their income. So the NHL, the NHL was it seemed like it was very competitive in terms of people trying to get contracts in place. It seemed like in the bigger market areas, so like in the bigger cities where you're more likely to get more fans to come to games, they were obviously getting more revenue, and they were using that to try and outbid for better players. And that's what's causing a lot of problems in the NHL from them continuing to get better viewership.
I think one of the weaknesses that the NHL had, like I was saying, I think especially with the reports, how there was, like I said, not trust at all with the reports, as well as their strength. One of the strengths that I saw is that they were the owners, they were the ones that were pretty much giving the money for the players and for, the whatever they needed to do. But one of the strengths I saw is like they were kind of in charge of the money. They were kind of like the ones that had that. But at the same time, how they wanted to have, what was it? Where is it? The salary cap for the teams. And then there was like a payroll tax one, and then there's all these different things that they thought that it was going to benefit them, which maybe it will. But that was their proposal, But I think one of their strengths is like that they have the power because they want costs certain, like they want to be sure of how much to invest, so they're smart about money. But at the same time, there is a lot of like the weaknesses would be trust for them. That's what I think. Okay, let's see. What are the best ways to strengthen a BATNA? BATNA? So it stands for best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So it says, what are the best ways to strengthen a BATNA? Or however you say it. Oh, no. Anyone has any thoughts about it?
I'm trying to think here, because is this like a general question of like in general, how is it a good way to strengthen a BATNA, or
Yeah.
In which ways can we strengthen a BATNA with the NHL or the NHLPA?
It says, what are the best ways to strengthen a BATNA?
Because my understanding of it, a best alternative to a negotiated agreement is basically if no agreement can be made, if an agreement or a negotiation fails, then like what's your backup plan? Best way to strengthen one? I would say you would really have to research and find all of your alternatives. Once you find all your alternatives, then you can choose from the best one. But if you're just kind of sitting on one alternative or no alternatives, then you're kind of in trouble. It's kind of like those kids that only apply to one college. and they really hope that they'll get into that one college, and then once that college turns them down, it's like, oh, well, what do I do now? Now I kind of wasted a whole semester or something like that. So,
Yeah.
or same thing like with looking at a job. If you just depend on one job, if you say, well, this is the only job I want, this is the only job I'm going to apply for, you have no BATNA in place, then you're going to have no job. So increasing your alternatives is probably the best choice.
I also think that like the research, it's a good idea because it helps, especially in this situation, it helps a negotiator to not give up, kind of thing. It helps a negotiator to keep pushing forward of that option that they have. That's kind of what I was thinking regarding the case. The best way, is like to have your options, to know what option will be your best, but at the same time, like knowing that what you stand for and what you're really negotiating for, and not just going without having like a backup and not giving up just because something doesn't go the way you wanted a lot of times. And like you say, not getting accepted to college, it doesn't mean that you have to stop applying for colleges, but it helps you not to give up, to keep applying for colleges, So that's kind of what I understood from that. Anyone else? Okay.